Hello, everybody, and welcome to REVA's Electrifying News July 2026 edition. With me, as always, my two co-hosts. We have Mr. Ian Graham joining us from Parts Unknown. How you doing, Ian?
Pretty good. I think everybody right now is in parts unknown with all the smoke. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just feeling around.
Yeah.
Also with me, as normal, Mr. Eric Stevens from the Listowel area. How are you doing today,
I'm
Eric?
doing great, Mark. I'm doing great.
Very good. Very good. Well, we've got some July news stories we wanted to touch upon. Ian's going to start the deck and we'll get rolling.
All right. So, first thing that we're dealing with is, of course, lots of news coming out with regards to Canada and the Chinese electric vehicles. And I actually saw this last night on CBC News on Dongfeng, I think is how you say
Yep.
this particular manufacturer. So, yeah, take it away,
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah. So Dongfeng made a little bit of a splash at the port of Montreal just this week. And they showed up with four vehicles, two EVs and two hybrid EVs. And they were on display. They fired up a web page, which we'll put a link in below if you'd like to go visit it. They indicated that they are going to be starting to release some vehicles in Canada, but it's not this year. It's going to be 2027, according to them. So
Mm.
they're still going through certification through Transport Canada. They're going to be releasing two of the smaller pure EVs in Canada to start with. And they're aiming at Quebec as being the start market for them. And that's it's kind of interesting that they've picked Quebec, but the reason is number of vehicles sold and of course, incentives in Quebec that have both a provincial and a federal side.
Mhm.
Although the provincial side has been shrinking, so it's something that this Chinese company has decided that they're going to look at Quebec as a starting base. Not saying that they're not going to move elsewhere, but they are saying that that's where they're going to start. So not a surprise, really, when it comes to sales of EVs and, of course, the infrastructure that's in Quebec, and, of course, cheap hydro rates in Quebec as well, cheapest in the country. So I can definitely see the reasons why. I'm not sure the others that are going to be starting, hopefully, in some in 2026, maybe late 2026, will be spreading into other areas. But again, this is Dongfei's roadmap. We're not really sure of the others yet. We know BYD, or we believe BYD is going to be opening some locations, but again, we don't have all the details at this point. Those companies have not released their road plans to us yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. Quebec and of course BC as well too. Um, I think those are markets that, for the reasons we've already stated, Quebec has always been a very EV friendly province, and BC as well too. BC's got a strong legacy Asian population, so many of those people may already have family members who drive these brands of vehicles and maybe have some familiarity with them. And in, Quebec used to be a province that used to have some automotive manufacturing, but doesn't anymore today. So they might be a little more open to exploring other brands or different brands of vehicles as well too, versus here in Ontario where we still have a very strong legacy auto manufacturing core. So it might be a little bit different to crack that. And the time frame makes sense for a couple of reasons too. Um, 2027 because that's when the uh, program changes to reduce or require a certain percentage of vehicles to be below a certain price threshold. And also, given the timing of when the announcement was dropped to allow Chinese manufacturers to come in, it just takes that time to certify vehicles and bring them to the market. So, yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
I had a discussion with a friend who's got two daughters in their early 20s. and it came up, about what is being offered in terms of electric vehicles, and inspiring them to actually purchase one, when the prices in a lot of cases is really kind of at that age, a little bit out of reach. And seeing the news report on this last night, and this vehicle is going to be around the $30,000 range. I think if we can show some of the youth that are interested in these vehicles some of the math of, yes, it's $30,000, but your Honda Civic that was around that price range also meant you had to buy gas, you had to do oil changes, you had to do all these things. And here you got this vehicle. I'm not sure what the ranges are going to be with these vehicles, but later on we have another interesting topic about, the charging aspect, and not really worrying about that whole thing. But I will be really curious to see how these Chinese electric vehicles and prices might influence some of the younger generation to really consider looking at these. And they also, I think some of them are going to look at the, hey, I'm not polluting. I don't have all these other things to worry about. And it's going to be, I think a bit of a game changer for this generation coming up, who might have also said, I'm not really worrying about a car. Now they might actually be looking at doing something like this. I like the design of this car. I think it's, it's simple. It's not oversized. And I have a feeling that something like this could do very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cars this size and this shape also tend to do very well in Quebec as well too. They have an affinity for this style of vehicle. So
a little more European looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I have found interesting is that I've been looking at some of the vehicle spotting pages that are out there, and I've noticed that there are several Chinese manufacturers now testing vehicles in Canada.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting given the quotas that are out there, and so many Chinese companies potentially looking to get into the Canadian marketplace. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, exactly. And to that quick point of Chinese electric vehicles, my cousin from Germany visited here for the last 2 weeks, and he was trying to find a Canada shirt or sweater of some type that was not made in China, but made in Canada. That was interesting. All right. The next topic we have here is, if you don't know much, it's kind of a relatively new thing, is a sodium-ion battery. We've been hearing about lithium batteries for so long. The sodium-ion battery is starting to make more headway. I think people are starting to hear about it more. But this is really interesting, especially when it comes to the aspect of mining. And, you're going underground. The last thing you really want is the diesel fumes going in the underground. And this company looks like they're going to be helping a lot with the transformation from diesel to more electric.
Yeah, so this is an interesting story. We've talked about in the past how construction vehicles and mining vehicles are starting to go electric because, running diesel underground requires extensive ventilation. There's a potential explosive potential, safety concerns, stuff like that, noise.
Mm-hmm.
So the mining industry has been electrifying, and it's been moving to electrify many of its equipment aggressively for a lot of reasons. But this is interesting because the problem also is that a lot of these mines are located in areas where they're not on the grid. And so the issue is they have to make their own power. So they're often running diesel generators, many of these mines, and it's responsible for a huge amount of diesel fuel every year for doing this. So, newer battery technology such as sodium ion, one of the companies that are heavily commercializing that is CATL, which is the largest battery manufacturer in the world. But many other companies are getting into sodium ion as well too, where they're much more cost effective, almost as energy dense as lithium iron phosphate. So these are a great type of technology that's good for grid tied storage and even for some EVs as well too. And these batteries now are going to be making their way into, in a sense, a grid tied storage application, but that'll help mining industry get off the grid or significantly reduce their diesel consumption. And just to make mining that much cleaner. So, people keep talking about how mining is, dirty industry, but the mining industry is making great strides in becoming cleaner and moving in that direction. So,
Yeah, definitely. the mining industry does have issue with emissions underground. Like that's you can't have people working underground and not have proper ventilation to get that emissions out of the mine to not affect people. And again, it's a natural to have this equipment move over to be electrified so that they can eliminate that out of the equation of what they have to do in a mine. So hopefully, this and other technologies will continue in that trend and move the ICE engines out of the mines and help everyone's bottom line and health lines.
Mhm. And of course, the other aspect of the sodium ion is it doesn't have quite the same necessary properties as lithium in terms of speed of charge, but energy density. Am I correct that it has a little bit more in terms of energy density? There's a little bit, if I remember reading, a difference between the two. So it'll be interesting to see with how that works, and with these remote sites, the physics, if you want to say, about all of this and the chemistry
Yeah,
on all of this. Yeah,
it's slightly less than lithium iron phosphate,
yeah,
but the charging performance is actually very good of sodium ion. They can be charged full 100% to 0%, very good temperature profile, and they can have a potentially very good high power density rate. So for charging fast.
It
yeah,
just seems that the battery industry is looking for any type of, I guess, new chemistries that they can use for abundance levels that will drive down the price of these batteries.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and the sodium ion batteries, of course, that's the other key thing, is that price wise, is quite good with these batteries as well. And I'm sure that's going to be a major factor in this company's decision to use this in relation to trucking and diesel, the cost of diesel now is at what it is, etc. So it's definitely going to influence the bottom line on that. So. All right. So speaking of batteries and energy, we in Canada, we have our largest EV battery repurposing facility in the Vancouver area. And basically, this is where I love this type of story, because a lot of people still have this sort of myth that, once an electric vehicle battery is done, it's done and it goes to landfill or whatever. But this company is showing, data centers, uses for data centers, hospitals, factories, microgrids, because, the majority of time when an electric vehicle battery is, so to speak, done, it's still got 80% retention the majority of the time. And for these type of, support systems for the hospitals, etc., it's not used the same way as an electric vehicle is in terms of the charge up and letting the power out, etc. The one thing I really thought was interesting with this article was the fact that they did this in 6 weeks to make it operational. And also, the amount of jobs that we got, the indirect jobs that we're getting by this. And it's, just showing this sort of positive cycle of what we can get with all of these, the batteries aspect of things and where we can use them. Every time I hear someone that says, "Oh, well, the EVs are going to take the grid down by having so many of them in the charging," yet this is actually going to probably be part of that prop up as well with the grid.
Yeah, it's great to see another a battery repurposing facility, and now this time on the West Coast as well too. So
Yeah.
having spreading that out regionally and having that set up, and BC is an area where they've been a forerunner in battery electric vehicles, getting more of them on the market, and microgrid and advanced technologies. And BC's been pushing harder than even most provinces into the electrification as well too, not just in the car, but also even their homes and stuff like that, where they've mandated heat pumps and stuff
Hmm.
and all new construction. So uh, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And what's interesting here is the article's title is not recycling, it's repurposing. So the thought of just recycling batteries has changed to first being reused
Mhm.
first. So if those batteries are, like Ian has mentioned, still have a high state of charge available to them, they can be put together, built into a larger array, and then sold to a hospital or a factory or somebody else that needs a microgrid.
Mhm.
And those batteries can be used immediately after being received without really having to reconfigure the chemistries or recycle any of the parts. They're put into an actual larger battery, and out the door they go to start living their second life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of the old 3 R's adage,
Yeah.
reduce, reuse, recycle. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And in this case, the reuse is repurposing
Mhm.
before the recycle.
Correct.
On this part of it. Yeah, it's funny because across the street from me was a major corporation, and I remember them testing uh, at the weirdest hours their diesel generators, and I, looking at this, going like, "Oh, you could have done this. Why? It's too bad. It's now that more of this is happening, but again, makes such a big difference in not using again the diesel generator." And then also, I can see them are going to be coupling this with the grid as well as potentially renewable energy as well. And it's going to make things a lot better overall. All right. I love this. The Kia PV5 cargo van. I look at it as um, I really actually want to get this as a matchbox. I think it's a neat looking van, and
Yeah.
reading a little bit more about it, the price, everything, and I'm sure we're going to see somebody do a van life conversion with this.
I wanted to just put a little spotlight on this vehicle because it's a new type of vehicle that's being introduced to Canada that we didn't previously have in much abundance. Yes,
Yep.
there was the Ford Econoline out there, or the e-Transit that was out there, but the mileage on that vehicle was rather low. It was under 200 kilometers, even in its second iteration, I believe, where this van has now got into the range of 360 kilometers. So it's a much better purpose vehicle for running around regionally with this vehicle, making deliveries. There's a ton of businesses out there that use small vans or full-size vans to actually perform deliveries for their businesses. And I think this could really put a dent in that type of business, can really help them out. On top of it, the price starts at under $50,000, so it does qualify for the federal rebate. So you can
Hmm.
get them down starting at 46,744, as mentioned here on screen. So this is going to be a benefit to Canadians. Kia is a great name when it comes to electric vehicles. They're dependable. They have many different options on the road, and this is a nice addition to what they have to offer Canadians. And I think it's going to be taken in very well. The other thing I think I will notice over time is that this cargo van may switch to a people mover as well. So they do have the option of putting other seats in it and putting it out to be like a, seven-seater minivan. So I really look forward to this starting to take off here in Canada.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, last mile delivery is one of those things. We've had some other manufacturers, like BrightDrop, which did have a van out, which unfortunately is being discontinued. But the price of that was, significantly more than this as well, too. This is going to be a great option for a lot of different people. I think this is a little more versatile. for certain applications and stuff like that. And that price point makes it very attractive, I think, for a lot of businesses and a lot of people as well too. And as you alluded to, Mark, in other markets like in Europe and stuff, they do sell passenger versions of this, and they even sell wheelchair accessible versions, and they even have camper accessories that Kia sells in other markets too. So I hope those other versions make it to Canada as well too, just to expand those options. So. I, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of us have been asking, are curious in that question about people mover, seven-seater. Is that option going to come out? Because I could see that used for so many things from, say, senior homes, airport transit. There's just so much that way that I could see that being a potential. And in terms of accessories, I would love to see where the roof is not just a few solar panels, but the type that would, say, roll out, so that you could have like two on top of the roof and then two that roll out and become like your canopy, like a lot of other campers have. But then, it's charging up the batteries, and then inside, is there potentially an access point to hook up, some other things? Maybe you want to do an induction stovetop, one or two plate, that type of thing. Now we're getting into the camping side of things. And that makes me curious if we're not going to see, something like this. Who knows that this couldn't maybe give VW and the ID Buzz, I mean, right? Like, if you think of the price of the ID Buzz and the range you're getting, and now you've got this is going to be a real competitor to them. And then if you put in all the other aspect of, camping, etc., I think he has got a hit on their hands with something like this. And who knows if they might not, down the road, make the 71 kilowatt battery architecture up a little higher to maybe 90 to give you that 500-kilometer range. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I'm curious to really take a look at this in person and see how the back looks with everything in that respect. So, all right. I really like this article, and it's interesting. This gentleman was from Germany. I sent the article actually to my cousin, who just went back home yesterday, and it really does give you that mindset of, well, if I have level 3 charging and I go to do the errands that I do, and I'm getting that charge in 30 minutes or so, you don't even think about charging anymore. And this person, of course, does not have charging where he lives.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, exactly. I love this article. That's why I wanted to highlight it. And it talks about what could be here, I think. And in the article, he even mentions that. He talks about in Canada, he didn't want to make this an article about why Europe is ahead of Canada. He actually came out and said, hey, the charger density is already about half of what it is in many places in Europe. And Canada's not far from taking those steps to getting to a place where we can get to this. So, he was talking about how he lives with an electric car. He's 100% dependent on public charging. He doesn't charge at home. And he says, for the most part, he doesn't think about it. He's able to go weekly to a grocery store, plug in his car, and do his thing. And the car charges while he gets his groceries, and he doesn't have a problem. So he basically doesn't even have to think about it. It's not a problem. It's just there. It's ubiquitous. The other thing I really liked about this article that talks about having, because there's always this big emphasis on megawatt charging and 400 kilowatt chargers and stuff like that, which is good. There's a place for those and a need for that. But he also talks about having the right charging in the right places. That you don't always necessarily have to have these high-powered DC chargers everywhere, or you don't necessarily have to have that. He talks about putting level 2 charging at workplaces, or having the right size DC fast chargers in certain areas as well too. You don't need 5-minute charging while you're going into the grocery store, because your car will be done charging long before you're back out again. So And he also talks about having the right number of chargers in certain areas as well too. When you only have one or two chargers in a particular location, it becomes that concern. Okay, do I have a backup charger in case it goes down or something like that? So he talks about having sites with multiple chargers to make sure that you know for sure when you show up there, there's a good chance you're going to find a charger and be able to charge and give that peace of mind. So he gave a good impression, and I like that. Vision of where we could be, I think, in the not too distant future. We've seen how fast the charging infrastructure can grow. And within, I think, even just 2 or 3 years, we could be there. No problem, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is something that what struck me was the right size charging. As Eric has mentioned, the if you go to a grocery store, you're typically there for 45 minutes to an hour. What size of a charger do you need to get a sufficient charge in that time period? If you go to a movie, for example, you're there for 2 hours, if not a little bit more. So is an L2 right sized for a cinema complex? There are different needs for charging, and in Canada, we've kind of struggled with this for a while because we've had different amounts of chargers available to us. And we were just learning maybe 10 years ago as to what charger was right size for different areas of the city or the region. And I think we're getting a much clearer picture of that now that we're more than 10 years into this. And I think that as municipalities and private companies look at charger needs, I think we all have a more clearer understanding of what's required in what areas. And I look forward to that changing the landscape of charging for us here in Southern Ontario.
Yeah. So to this point of this article, we took the Chichimon ferry from South Baymouth to Tobermory. And I was looking and I came across there's six new fast chargers in Tobermory. It's nice to buy a park and everything else, but of the six, three did not work. And I got the last one, got in, plugged in everything this way. And it was interesting because he made that point about if you had an area with lots of DC chargers and people know it and rely on it because it makes sense to be there. And in Tobermory, if they get, those other three working, we got six DC fast chargers. I thought, from this article, it really did show that Tobermory is kind of getting together and figuring this out. South Baymouth on Manitoulin Island now has to do the same thing because if you have, X amount of cars on the ferry that are traveling, then it would be nice to know that when you get off at those points, here's six DC fast chargers, which is probably for right now the perfect amount of chargers to keep going. And this gentleman did a great job of showing us and just taking away that sort of idea of like, where do I charge and everything this way, and let's grow it and do it responsibly where it makes sense. So, all right. Our last article for tonight, and I really like the fact that this came up only a couple of days ago. And of course, my cousin from Germany, I've been talking with him about some of this with the EVs and that. But this last month of June, Germany's battery electric vehicle sales were outselling the gas and diesel vehicles. It outsold by a small margin the hybrids, and then of course there's the plug-in hybrids. So this has been kind of an interesting thing where you're seeing again that transition is happening as well. So to that point, maybe we're going to have Germany. I mentioned that as well about Norway. And who knows, maybe, that's going to start catching up as well with the sales.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a large turnaround in Europe as a overall when it comes to EVs. And I think the pressure has happened with this latest gas spike and the geopolitics of the Strait of Hormuz. I think what we've got is a perfect storm when it comes to people may be starting to wake up and say, okay, I've been in the gas game forever. We have these spikes that roll along every few years because of different problems in the world. Why am I not looking at other alternatives? And I'm just hoping that this latest spike in sales is people starting to wake up and smell the coffee and say that it is time to move. It is time to not just think about it, but actually put some research into it, compare what's around me, compare the pricing, and oh, look, it does make sense for me to move to electric cost wise, financially, and it helps with the situation with the gasoline spikes and gets me out of that game forever.
Hmm.
Yeah, I absolutely. Like, I mean, with what's been going on in Europe right now, um, you know, the electric vehicles in Germany just make so much sense. I mean, they've seen fuel crises. A lot of the fossil fuels that Germany has been dependent on have come from Russia. They've come from other markets, and they've always been very dependent on that. And now they're starting to take a step back and saying, well, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't be so dependent on this. And now they're seeing electrification as a way to move forward without that dependence. And you know, I think they have the foresight and the vision to see, companies like Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen. I think they see electrification as the future. They know it's the future, and
Hmm.
they're making strides to go in that direction because the offerings that they're coming out are actually now starting to become very serious. And you see Volkswagen, and I really wish Volkswagen would bring some of those options to North America, but they're launching vehicles now like the ID.2 and the VW Polo, which is now going to be fully electric in Europe as well too. And these are very affordable new electric offerings that are coming out as well. And Mercedes's EVs, they have pretty much a full electric lineup of vehicles now, and they're very competitive vehicles for what they have. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, as again, as time goes on, especially with the geopolitical aspect of things. And now we're dealing with, of course, with the Strait of Hormuz, and that just doesn't seem to be subsiding. So, it's will direct people to consider alternatives, especially if we. I'm kind of predicting come fall that we're going to see gas prices probably go back up close to $1.80 to $2 again. Um, I feel like once the summer is kind of done, that we're going to start seeing that aspect, depending on, of course, what happens. Um, but Europe in general, not just Germany, the sales is definitely increasing that much more. And Norway kind of started this a few years back. It's now interesting to see these other countries, sorry, that are almost neck and neck with gas vehicles, and then when that overshoot kind of happens as well.
Yeah, if you look at a chart, you've seen this slow and steady uptick in Europe, and there are bumps every once in a while of great interest, and we're in one of those bumps right now. So
Yeah.
it never collapses or goes back, but it just keeps ticking up. And even with Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, they're all looking at this, watching this, and they just continue to go up, up, up. We're getting close to 50% penetration in some of these countries, which was really unheard of just like 4 or 5 years ago. And
Hmm.
outside of Norway, which of course has been the leader from the offset because of the program that they had in place for their people. But
Yeah.
it's great to see that Europe is now catching on, and I'm hopeful that the people of Canada will follow their lead.
Yeah. All right. Well, there is tonight's rundown of electrified news. There's always interesting stuff that is going on that we, can't get everything in our podcast here, but hopefully that gives everyone a pretty good update on things. And I think, as you mentioned with Canada, this whole aspect of Chinese electric vehicles, I'm seeing more news articles come out. This was really interesting this week in Quebec, what's happening. And I'm pretty sure gonna get Canadians talking that much more about it.
Oh, it's there's huge interest in the Chinese vehicles as we are on the outside of all the information still. We don't have solid pricing, we don't have solid release dates, but it's all getting closer. As Eric mentioned, these things have to be certified. They have to run through their course, and you can't just have a new manufacturer introduce vehicles in Canada in 6 months flat. It does take, some time, and that's what's going on. I really expect to see a lot more coming into the end of 2026 and certainly early 2027.
Hmm.
Well, let's wrap up with some shout outs if we have them. Yeah, Ian, any shout outs from you?
You know what? Shout out to Toronto and Niagara Falls. Even though I've lived next to these places for so long, because of my cousin from Germany, I got to explore so much of these cities that I had never really done before, with different tours and everything. And right in our backyard, it was just like this is awesome. Especially again, if you're interested in electrification, I can't highly enough recommend the power plant at Niagara Falls that Nikola Tesla had worked to build, and the elevator down and the tunnel, and just seeing everything. It's amazing when you look at the fact this is over 100 years that this was done. It's quite the achievement, and a lot of fun.
Very good. Eric, any shout outs?
Yeah, I got one. So a shout out to the bad traffic on 401, because of that, I had to do a detour around it, and I managed to drive by a place that I didn't know existed. It's called Pride Trucking and Logistics. And when I drove by it, they had this big, huge canopy set up there with a massive sign on it saying EV charging. And it was clearly designed for heavy trucks to drive through and charge. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So this is a company that specializes in logistics and renting out, heavy trucks and commercial vehicles. And it looked like they were making some big investments into electrification as well too. So I thought that was an interesting sign and a positive thing. So.
Very good. Well, shout out to Pride Trucking in Ontario, in between Mississauga and Kitchener.
Yeah, these guys are just outside of Milton, so yeah.
Okay. Very good. Shout out to Pride. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up on the video. Press that subscribe, helps us out immensely. Doesn't cost you anything. And we'll get together next month and see what's happening in electrifying news for REVA. Thanks so much for joining us.